We're going to start today in assignment 1. So I've expanded assignment 1 to include a little bit more than what it used to include. We're going to create a magic 8-ball. Okay, and I wanted to start building it with you guys. I'm not going to do the whole assignment for you, but we're going to probably build half of it today and then kind of let you work on the other half. And after today, we're really not going to talk about the stuff in assignment 1, even though it's not due till, September 18th or something like that. We need to start moving on to the next stuff. Okay, so it'll give you some time if you're struggling to keep working on it and asking me questions. But we've already worked on console apps. We know how to get the user's input from a console app. We know how to use the random class so that we can get a random, in this case, it's going to be a random answer from a magic 8-ball. And the user is going to ask, do you want to ask a question? Sure. They type in a question, press enter, and it will get a random response from an 8-ball. Okay, at least from our list. So we have a list of responses that the 8-ball will respond to. Okay, and then if they press X, it's just going to close the program. So something unique about this app is that we're going to use the file input-output. So we want to store all of these responses to a file. Okay, so we're going to create an app that a user can type in the responses, and it's going to save it to a file. And then the other application, which is the console app, is going to search for that same file or find the file and read those responses, and then it'll get a random response from it. Okay, so that's kind of the purpose of the application. Does anyone remember the 6 steps to the program development lifecycle? Talked about it in Info 1200. First step's understanding the program's purpose. Is there any questions that you don't understand about this project as I simply explained it to you? Is there any other details you want to know about it? Okay. What's the second step of the program development lifecycle? For those who haven't taken my class or might have taken it from somebody else that doesn't explain it, what's the second step of developing a program? Flowcharts. Okay, flowcharts would come just after the next step. This step 2, so I'd be around step 3. Second step is designing the GUI. Okay, designing what the user is going to interact with. So you ask yourself the question, what input's going to be received, what processes need to be processed, and what output's going to be produced. Okay, if you can answer those questions and draw a GUI of what you would think it would be like, then that would be the second step of developing a program. Instead of getting into the code like I typically do, it's like, hey, let's hurry and throw the code in a project, make it run. If you do that, what's going to happen typically? You're going to have more issues and more errors, right? You're going to have to go back in and be like, crap, what was really the purpose of this application? So we understand the purpose, we design it, you would grab out a piece of paper, or you could do this on a computer, you would draw out what the GUI would look like. Okay, if we're going to build a Windows application, we might have something like this. And then what would you picture a GUI looking like in this case? So we have a graphical user interface to receive, or so that I can enter all these responses in. What controls would you put on?
Buttons.
Okay, what buttons are you thinking?
For this?
Yeah, for this one. Let's kind of draw the GUI out before we actually develop it.
Exit button.
Okay, we'd have an exit button, possibly down in the bottom right corner to close. Okay.
Not like roll the dice, but getting the answer.
Okay, so this is just entering the input. So the 8-ball, yeah. So if we wanted to simulate an 8-ball looking like it's shaking, that's great. But the first part of this application is actually just storing these in a text file. So we're going to do that first. Okay, so we might have a text box that might say maybe even text or answer with a text box. So a label and a text box that the user can type in. What else would we need? We would need a submit button or a save button. Okay, something like that. What else would we do? Like if they click the save button, what else is going to happen?
Maybe a message box like confirming your
Perfect, because if I click save and it did save it, it doesn't automatically pop up with a message box that says it was saved, right? So we might have another message box out here that would show up. It would say saved, file, gosh, file was saved. Something like that. We can put in some text inside of that little message box. Okay, and then a little close button on here, or a little X at the top right corner. Good. Anything else we need to add to the GUI itself? I think that's pretty good. Okay, so now let's design the program's logic. Okay, that's the third step in the program development lifecycle. We do the logic. We said flow charts, right? So a flow chart, we would typically have a start. Then what would it flow to? Anyone remember flow charts? You're like, oh crap, these sucked, right? How would this thing work?
User's input.
Okay, so we'd have a user's input. It would be a shape like this for the answer. Okay, then what?
Save button.
A save
Like
button.
an option. Well,
What would I put like right here if I had a decision to make? Exit or not exit. Okay, that's a good decision. What else could we put in here? Trying to think, if the user put something in the text box and it was invalid. So we'd have some sort of validation in here. Yes? No. Does that make sense? So we'd have some sort of validation, because if it was not valid, in fact, I probably should have put no over here. If it wasn't valid, we would come over here. Actually, it'd be a parallelogram. And it would have some sort of output that would tell the user, like, why. On the screen, it would show maybe a message box that says that there was an invalid input. It would probably clear the results. So that would be another input output, or maybe a process, and then would ask for the user's input again. Okay. If it was valid, so this would be yes, what are we going to do? We're going to store some sort of database, store the file, right? Save and store the file, then what?
go back to user input, basically.
Perfect. So if it stored it, in
Like,
fact,
did you do a decision like done? Like, are you done with your inputs?
right, so let's say it goes back up here, down at the bottom. After it saves it, we're going to have a message box, input, output. Let's pretend it goes all the way up here, okay? Anyone seen these beautiful looking flowcharts that have horrible arrows because they don't have enough room? Okay, we said that it was saved. Now what are we going to do? Maybe ask for, would you like to enter another one? Or we would clear the results. We might clear the results and then ask for the user's input again, something like that, right? Or if they don't want to clear the results, we might have a decision that would say, do you want to enter another, or was another entry entered, enter into there or not? Or, yeah, if my computer starts going, man, this is taking forever. I need to switch this back to the other audio though. Let's see. Okay. Come on, Visual Studio, I know you can do it. Okay, come on, file. Let me create the project. Oops, wrong button. Minimize that. Okay, new Windows form app using the .NET framework. I'm going to turn off one of these lights so we can see this a little better. I'm going to change the name of my project and the name of the solution to be different, because the solution file is going to have two projects in it. Even if you kept it the same, it's not really going to matter. But the reason why is because I'm going to have a console app and a Windows form app in this solution, and I can run both of them, okay?
Okay.
So the name of the project, if it starts showing up, I'm going to call this Magic 8 Ball Form. And the name of the solution is just Magic 8 Ball App. Magic 8 Ball Form. And then I'm going to call this the solution name Magic 8 Ball App. Okay. Come on. I don't think I've ever seen a computer go this slow. Okay, press OK. Good. Okay, so let's go into designing the GUI first. Even though we've drawn it up here on the board, let's go into the toolbox and add a label that would say like 8-ball answer, have a text box, a save button, and an exit button. Okay, have those 3 or 4 controls on there. There we go.
You want the form to be named to a certain.
Yeah, so we should rename the form as well. Make this pretty big, because that answer could maybe get quite long. Ball answer. Save and exit. That kind of okay for our little app? Yeah, so to rename the form, you'll notice up in the Solution Explorer we have a form1.cs. It's not good practice to have a form named form1.cs. So I'm going to right click on the form, rename it. I'm going to call this add answer form. Notice the style of how I named this, okay, the naming convention. If form should start with a capital letter, every subsequent word should also have a capital letter, and the word form should be at the end. Okay, so it should be descriptive enough to explain what this form is supposed to do, and then the word form is at the end. When you've renamed it, you'll have a message box that says, I noticed you renamed the form. Would you like me to rename all the instances that point to that form? And the answer is yes, because if you don't, it'll break the app, and it's going to point back to the form1.cs. So I'm going to say yes, and that way our app doesn't break. A couple of the most important properties, again, is first one is the name property. I've clicked the text box, and I want to rename the text box to something that's more, I don't know, more descriptive than just text box 1. If we have a text box, we should label it as txt box, and then we give it a name, right? We have a label. A label should be, where else could I put this? LBL, give it a name. And then we have a button, which is BTN. And then we give that button a name. Okay, so that's the 3 different objects or control types we're going to use. So I'm going to rename this first one as txtbox answer. I'm going to name my buttons BTN save and BTN exit. And then my label is LBL answer text. I don't know how to put that on there. title answer. I don't know what to call this. I'm not going to program this label to do anything. Typically, I don't even rename an object unless I'm going to program it in the back end to do something. So leaving it as label 1 is actually okay, but I'll rename it to LBL title answer, so I know it's the title to the answer text box. TXT box answer, or 8-ball answer is fine. What are the naming rules again? What's the syntax rules for naming an object? Camel case is not syntax. It would be more of just a preference, right? So what's a syntax rule that we have to follow?
No special characters.
No special characters except an underscore. Perfect. So underscore is the only special character we can use. What are the other rules? The first character has to be an uppercase letter, a lowercase letter, or an underscore. Has to be. So if you put a number as the first character, that's a syntax error. Okay, so an uppercase letter, lowercase letter, or an underscore. What's another rule that you have to follow? No spaces. Okay, and then after the first character, there could be it's alphanumeric. Okay, so you can have a number in it as long as it's after the first character. Okay, so we know that. Hopefully that's just a quick refresher. Let's go ahead and start creating the syntax. First thing we need to do is we need to load the file or create the file. The last thing we need to do to this, actually, let's drag our form just a little bigger. And let's add a list box. The reason why we would want a list box is because what if they're adding answers and they don't know what answers are already being saved in the file, so they add the answer again and again and again. It'd be really nice to be able to see in this list box what the current answers are so that they don't have to add the answer twice. Okay, so let's add a list box, and a list box should be LST BOX, and then we give it a name, answers. So this is the naming convention I'm going to use, and that'll all depend on the company you're working for. They might not call it list box, they might just call it LB or LSTB or something like that. But we'll call it list box like that. Okay. Let's create the pseudocode. Anyone need a second to get the rest of the controls in? Doing okay? Okay, here we go. Double click your form. So you see the title bar, that's where I like to double click. What that does is it creates a load event. A load event is what's going to happen before the user sees the application. So typically you would put in there, like anything you need to process from maybe a database or a data file in this case. So if we add a method, we always put the 3 forward slashes. I'll put a lot of pseudocode in today because this is an assignment you're going to submit. Okay, so 3 forward slashes above every method. The purpose of this load method is to load the saved answers and add them to the list box, something like that. Okay. And then we'll do them each individual step to get to that point. What would be the first step in loading all the answers to the list box?
Using system.
We need a using system.io, so we can put that up there. That's okay. Using system.io. Let's create just the logic though now. So we have the using system.io. What's the step-by-step process that we're going to have to create in source code to make this thing work? Stream reader. Okay, we need a stream writer? Not quite. But what if the file does not exist? How are we going to stream read it? So we will need the stream reader and the stream writer in this load event, most likely. Okay, so do you guys remember, I told you a story about creating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in like junior high. You guys remember that? For you guys who weren't in my class, I remember when I was in junior high, our teacher asked us to write the specific steps on creating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And it was a writing class, so I thought I was going to be super sarcastic, and I literally wrote like 50 steps to create a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And it was perfect, at least I thought it was. And then he said, when we're done, we're going to pick one of the classmates to actually read their steps, and I'm going to create that peanut butter and jelly sandwich from the steps you provide. And so he picked mine, and it was awesome because I'm like, this is going to be the perfect peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So first step, I said something like, grab the loaf of bread and open the bread. And I forgot to tell him how to open it. So he looked at the bread and looked at the loaf, and it had a twisty tie on it. And he's opened the bread, and he grabbed the plastic and ripped it open. Okay, so the bread was open. And then I said, grab one slice of bread and set it on the plate. And he grabbed it, set it on the plate, went through all this process. And then I got to the point where I said, okay, grab the peanut butter. And he grabbed the peanut butter jar, and I said, okay, grab the knife, grab the peanut butter knife and the peanut butter jar, and scoop some peanut butter out of the peanut butter jar. And guess what I forgot to tell him to do? I forgot to tell him to open that stupid peanut butter jar. And guess what happened to that plastic knife when he tried to scoop peanut butter out of the peanut butter jar without opening it? He jammed it into the top, and it shattered. Okay? And then I said that, and I'm like, okay. And then it said, spread the peanut butter on the slice of bread on the plate. So he looked at his knife, looked at the peanut butter. There was no peanut butter on the knife, so he grabbed the peanut butter and rolled it on the bread. Okay, and that's what his interpretation of was spreading it on the bread. And he went through this whole process and destroyed a couple pieces of bread and a knife and everything else, and it was just horrible. So that being said, just like that instance, when we create this application, we need to know step-by-step logic to make this thing work. And if we get it out of order, or if we forget to do something, what's going to happen to our app? It doesn't work. It's either going to crash, or we're going to miss some logical errors, like opening that stupid peanut butter jar. Okay, so we need to know, okay, what's the step-by-step process to get this thing to work? I'm going to let you guys try to tell me as we create this. Okay, here we go. We just need to load the file and put it in the list box. And okay, back another thing. My wife's like, hey, I need you to create this on the website, and it's just easy. All I need you to do is just do this. I'm like, that's not easy. Like, yeah, making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is easy, right? But how quickly can we screw that up, and how many steps does it really take to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? So it sounds easy. Grab the file and put it in a list box. Here we go. Step 1. Check to see if it exists. Okay, check to see if what exists? The file. Where's the file located? How am I going to check to see if it's even in that file location? Where do I go back to? Back to Adam?
So,
What's the very first step?
I mean,
Make a working directory.
Perfect. We know we need to get the file. We need to get it from a directory. And where's that directory going to come from? The stream reader or the stream writer? Stream reader or stream writer, depending on if the file exists, right? So we just need to create an if statement to see if the file exists first to know if we need to use the stream reader or stream writer. So we're going to say, does file exist? That's going to be a true statement, right? Or a true false statement. If yes, ... we're going to do this. Else, we're going to do this. Else, create file. Okay, let's go into the if it does exist. Let's go ahead and tab it over. So we have this if file exists. We go down to we're going to create, like, does the file exist right below it, right? And what's the next step if it does exist? We're going to open the file, because the 3 steps of using the file: open it, use it, close it, right? So we're going to open the file from its location. So we need to know the location path on there, okay, in that line of code. Next step, after we've opened it, we're going to create a loop that's going to read every single item of them. So we're going to say loop through file. Good. Read the file. During the loop, what are we going to do? So I'm going to tab it over again. We're going to write it to the list box. Perfect. So we're going to say write items, or in this case, answers to list box. Or we can say add or write. So we're going to say add. In this case, since it's a list box, we can say listbox.items.add. Add the answers to the list box by reading it. Good. What's the next step? Do we need to do anything else inside the while loop?
close.
I don't think we need to do anything inside it, so let's just close it. So close the file. Okay, that's if it exists, else it does not exist. So what are we going to say if it does not exist? We need to create what? An instance of the stream reader. Sorry, stream writer. Sorry, kind of got ahead of myself. So we created the instance of the stream writer. Now we need to create the file. And put it in a specific location. Okay, after we've created the file and put it in a specific location, we then need to close the file. So there's our logical steps to load all of our answers into the list box. This does one of two things. The first thing it does is if the file exists, it shows all the answers. The second thing it does for us is that it creates the file if it does not exist so that we can append to that file that's now been created. So we don't have to check to see if it's created when we say save the file. It's created on the load event, no matter what. So now we can just use the append file, okay, or append text. Good. So is this the best logical steps in the order it should be in? So I think what we should say if the file does not exist, I think we should do that first because then we're just going to create it and then do those steps no matter what. So we're going to say if no, let's move this around because I think this will be a little bit cleaner. Come on, let me move it. There we go. If the file's not created, we're going to put this up here. Else read, actually we don't even need an else. We'll just do this. How about that? So if it doesn't exist, create it. And then we'll still do all of these steps. If it's created and there's nothing in it, it's just not going to display anything in our list box. This will simplify the code. Notice we took out a little bit, and we don't even have to have a full else statement on our if statement. So let's do an if it's not created, and then we're going to open the file, loop through the file, close the file. I think that'll be the quickest way or the best way to process the file. Any questions about the steps of creating this file or reading the file? Am I missing anything? Am I going to ruin my peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Sometimes you just kind of have to test to see if it's going to work. Then you throw away the peanut butter and jelly sandwich and fix it on the next 2 slices, right? We'll just go with that and see what happens. Okay, go back to your design view. Let's double click let's do the hardest one first. We'll do the exit. 3 forward slashes, close the form. And then to close the form, we're just going to say close the form again. Okay, there's our pseudocode for the exit button. It's just going to do one simple step, just close the form. Okay. You don't need to save anything on the close, so that's all it's supposed to do. You got it? What's your question? Okay, sometimes when that happens, you might have created a click event for the one first, and then you created a copy of the button later. So to fix that, we just create the pseudocode or the source code in the back end. So double click your save button. That one's not going to create either. Okay, that's okay. Oh, you're running it. Just press stop. And then double click it. There we go. And then go back to your front end and click on the other one too after that one's done. Okay. Double click your save button next. Let's create a summary. So the full purpose of the save button is to take user input and store it to the file. We'll do some other things like if it's invalid or if there's something there, we'll do that process inside of here and explain why it doesn't work. But the whole real purpose of just saving it is just to grab the user's input and save it to that file we're gonna store. Okay. First step in saving the file, we know it's created because we've done the load event and the file is there. So what are the steps to store the user's input to the file?
Do we have to convert the text in the text box to like a string variable?
It's already a string. That's a good question. Yep, it comes in as a string.
We want to make it a constant string variable though for user input that
We could. Yep, we could do that. The reason why we don't have to is because it's already a string variable, so we can just say textbox.text, and that'll just grab it from the text box on the fly.
So this is where we append the text.
So yeah, so we can't just append the text from nothing, right? So what's the first step in appending the text?
Open an instance of stream.
Perfect. So we need to create an instance before we can open it
Right.
of the stream writer. Okay. Once we've created the instance of the stream writer, we then need to make sure that the user has the rights. So we're going to put in a try catch, try statement to catch errors. So if it's valid, so inside the try, we need to open the file, we need to use the file, we need to close the file. Okay, so we're going to say append text to existing file. Thank you. I had a brain fart there for a second. Okay, we appended the text to the existing file. The append text is an open statement. So if it's not open, it will literally put it into the memory for us so that we can append it. Okay, so append the text. Next step. It's that easy. Just close it. That's it. So we're going to say close the file. Now what? Good. Message box to show user answer was saved. Doesn't matter. You should probably close the file first and then display it, the little message box. Good. But it wouldn't matter really in this case. Okay, close the file. Say that the file was saved. Perfect. Clear text box. Love it. So the nice thing about a GUI instead of a console app is we don't have to ask them. They can just start typing in again, right? Perfect. So we're going to take it. Where do you want to put it? Before the message box or right here? Doesn't matter really. Okay, so add answer to list box. Anything else? That's pretty much it. The one thing we could do when we clear it, we can also focus it. And that's why I think the add answer to the list box might be better above these. We're going to say focus back to answer text box. And because we're doing add answer to the list box after, it should be better practice to either before the message box or after the message box to add the answer. And I think we just created the entire thing except the catch. Catch error. Then we'll say display error message. Good. You guys are awesome. That wasn't too daunting or too hard. Okay, now what I want you guys to do is build it. I've given you all of the pseudocode to build the entire thing. When you're stuck, raise your hand. and I'll help you.
Can you show the load event again?
Yep. Where are we going to put the file path? I guess we should probably determine that before we just let you go at it, because where would be a good place to put the file path for this file? In the bin debug folder? Probably somewhere in your project folder it should be. Okay? If it's not in the bin debug folder, you can put it in a different location in the project so that you can share it between the two projects. So a good place to put it might be, let's see if I can find this spot. So we have your user, source, repos. You find your Magic 8-Ball app. It would be completely fine to put it right here where the solution file is. Or you can create another folder in here that would say shared files, right? And then you can put any files you're going to share between all of your projects. So it might be a better thing just to go, I'll just right click, new folder. I'm going to say shared files. Okay, and then I'm going to put the location of the file I'm going to store inside of there. So to get to that, you just go up into your GUI, copy that. So it will be specific to the user itself, but at least the file is going to be in there for me to actually see it when you submit it. But get the full file path of that shared files and store it in there and pull it from there. Okay? Yeah.
So, as I was trying to like reverse some things that I
Sure.
was changing, I accidentally reversed like naming these. So I had to go rechange them. Is it supposed to automatically change these right
It
here?
doesn't really matter. So go to your name dot, go back to your GUI
Yeah.
and click on that button again and go up to the name. Or just A to Z,
That
yeah.
name?
BTN
Or-
save, yeah.
And so I changed it before it was save, and in here just 'cause it makes it safe.
So-
like, should I
So if you want a BTN save, all you do is just type it in right now as BTN save. Oh, before,
mother?
I hate those touchpads.
Oh my, that's what's going on. Okay. Well, I do that, and I just have to delete it all.
Nope,
Or-
you,
no.
you want to keep the BTN, just put BTN right before the save, right?
Oh, right before it.
And then you see this little light bulb show up, hit the
Yeah.
light bulb, and then say rename. Yep. And so what that's going to do is it's going to rename it where it actually calls it from.
Okay, and same with this since that one's now.
Yeah. Yep. So just rename it right there, BTN exit, right?
Oh,
So rename it to BTN exit and get rid of that button one. There you go. And then hit the light
Okay.
bulb, rename.
But even though since I went in and renamed it,
Make sure you hit that light bulb while you're here.
yeah. So
Even though you renamed it on the front end, it
Oh.
doesn't change it in the back end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But even though since it was like saying button one beforehand, if I go and change it in here, would it still reference the same thing?
It would. Uh-huh.
Interesting, because the back end is still pulling from that same.
Right, so this file, if you scroll up to the very top actually, you see that it's a partial class, meaning that half of it's here and half of it's on the front end. So if you go into the designer.cs, that's actually the file that actually combines this one and the code. So if you hit that little plus button, you'll go find all of your controls right here. So your BTN exit, you'll notice that it was named to BTN exit, but this is where it actually calls the event handler. And you create that
Okay.
before you rename it. It's going to have the old name. So that's why we renamed all instances and it renamed it here.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
This is different. Okay.
So,
Yeah, that's good one.
anyone need a kickstart to help them? Where do you want me to start helping you? How about I do this? If. There you go. Does that help you a little bit? No, that sucks. If the file exists, then we can take all this pseudocode, put it into there. Okay, so there's your help. If you're completely like, I don't even know where to start with this, just look at your pseudocode and do what it's asking you to do. Does the file exist? If no, right? So we're going to come into here, create an if statement. We're going to say if the file does not exist.
So you need a stream reader to try to open the file or
Yes.
identify.
Yep, so we missed one thing, right? So we need to come up in here. Oh, actually, we could just say file dot exists. That's it. So this whole method, the file dot exists, returns true or false. We don't need a stream reader or a stream writer.
Oh.
We're just using the system.io to say, hey, does the file exist? Give me the entire file path, and where again are we going to put the file? In that shared folder, right? So we can go back into our shared folder or shared files, copy the file path, and then paste it into here. We can say @paste. And then we need one more backslash that says, what are we going to call this file? I don't really know, right? So we can actually concatenate it with the file _ name. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to, sorry, name should be all caps lock. It'll allow us to create a constant with the file name up above so it's consistent. So let me just go up into the class, constant string file _ name equals answer 8ball.txt. Okay. They're not going to let me concatenate it? Did I spell it wrong? Oh. It'd help if I spelled it right. Name. There we go. So there's your kickstart to maybe how I would do it. So you might want a pseudocode above that constant also. It says constant for the file name. Does that help a little bit? Thumbs up if you say that. Good? Okay. I think you can get it now. That was a rough start, I think. Maybe a little tougher. This is if it does exist. Remember, we're saying if no, so how do I take the opposite value of this? An exclamation mark where?
Beginning.
Right at the beginning. So if not file exists, then we take the opposite value to say, oh, cool, you do not exist. Let's go create you. Right? If we would have kept it the other way, it's going to check for the true. Now we're checking for the false. So that's a good question. Because we're using the @ symbol, the @ symbol needs to be right next to it. I don't know if we can do both of them. It would have to be before the @ symbol, though, if we did that. And let's see if it lets me do it. Yep. So if you're going to concatenate it, make sure you put the $ before the @ symbol. The @ symbol is the escape characters, because these backslashes are illegal inside of a string. They're not illegal, but it takes the next character and it says, what are you going to do with the \u, right? A \n, we don't have any of those, but that's like a new line. A \quote would let me allow quotes inside of my string. So the @ symbol just ignores the backslashes and just puts it as a string literal.
Would we do a try catch for opening or stream writing?
Yeah, we should always do try catches. That's a good thing to bring up. I didn't put that in there. So yes, you will want try catches for each the reading and the writing for all of those. Mm-hmm.
Do we need to add in, like it's like the file.exist doesn't have
Oh
this,
yeah,
so
so at the very
which
top,
line
using
there?
system.io.
So that's where that
Yeah,
comes from. So
yep.
all of like the file related things
Yeah. If we're going to just use like standard text files. Yep.
So you're like inputting the file output file.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly. We'll use a different one that uses a stream reader and stream writer, like networking. When we're writing to like a server and reading from a server, same kind of idea, right? But it's not the system.io, it'd be sockets and stuff like that. All right, what do we got for your little area? Oh, you got it? Perfect. Yep. Beautiful.
I'm sorry.
No, this is good.
In C sharp, like I know the exclamation mark signifies like not,
Mhm.
right? But it works with anything, not just not equals. It can be like not this exists. And
Mhm.
that way. So
How
it
nice
works
is
with
that?
Everything. 'Cause usually
Yeah.
it's just like not equals. That's the only thing that works.
So-
with, but this can work with.
Yeah, so this is just the not, was the opposite value, but another way to type that exact same thing is the not equal to true. Right, you could do that too.
Oh, and then you get rid of that right there.
Right.
So equal to true, and then would true need to be in actually just.
I think if you just got rid of that, it might have worked. What does that say? Oh, am I outside something? Oh, I need to close the parenthesis after the,
after
the
that,
quote,
right there, that would need to be closed, and then it should.
and then get rid of the one out.
here.
Yep, I just put it in the wrong spot.
And then that works. Oh,
So it's the same thing as saying not equal to true, but you're like, well, why put all of that? Yeah,
And so the not is applying to existing.
exactly. The existing method itself returns true or false. Yep.
So to create your instance in the StreamWriter, I'm trying to remember it. It's StreamWriter equals new.
So just StreamWriter semicolon. Yeah, okay, so let's do the next, now that I've given you just a few minutes, we're going to create an instance of the StreamWriter. So we just say StreamWriter. We give it a name because we're writing the file. We're saying output file, semicolon. Okay, simple as that. Now to create the file, again, we should always put the reading and writing in a try catch. So probably right above this, we'll just say try and catch. And just put everything inside the try. We forgot to put in the pseudocode for the try catch. So inside of here, you probably ought to put display error message. Okay. And then to create the file in a specific location, we could actually have taken this whole thing and created a file path. Probably would have been better as a constant. In fact, file name, and then let's do another constant string as a file path. Equals, and then we'll just take this, cut, paste. Now, an issue we're going to see with this is that we can't add, I don't think we can add a value.
When we actually create the text file, we need to designate where it's going to be saved at.
Right. Just going to copy that and paste it right here. So there's the entire file path. So instead of saying if the file exists, we're just going to say file path. And I just modified it so it's just up above in a constant. You don't have to do that. It's just that we're going to use that in 2 different locations already. So the file path I've just added, not just the file name. I've taken off the file name, the call to the file name, the constant, and just added the entire file path, including the file name. Well, we might need that to when we call it, just the file name itself. Actually, I don't even think we will need that at all. We'll keep it up there just in case. If we don't use it, we'll delete it. I don't think we'll need it anymore, though. Okay, so output file. We have the file path now that includes the file name. So now we're going to create the file. We're going to say output file. Output file equals, what did you guys put? File dot not exists in this case. Create text, good. And then we'll just pass in file path, which includes the file name. Because it doesn't exist, we've already checked for that in the if statement. So we're saying, okay, let's go make let's make a file path for you and create it. And then we'll just say output file dot close, 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 close. Okay. And then to display the error, message box dot show ex, which we don't have yet, dot message. Okay, so there's the first part of loading the file. Now you can go down a little further. I give you just a few minutes to get your brain going. Maybe that'll help too. You guys doing okay? What's your error right there? What's that? Input file. Let's see. We don't have an input file yet. Oh, these will come down in here, I think, right? And we don't need an.
That was what we had tried originally.
Yep.
That's wrong.
So that's okay. And we don't even need an else. We can just get rid of that part. Yep.
We don't need that part.
We don't need an else because it's not. If it's non-existent, we're going to create it, so we can just do this exact same thing. So how do we open a file? So we need this instance of the stream reader, right? Yep, perfect. Yep, and then we'll do a try catch around all of that. And yeah, you got that whole section right there. You can just kind of copy over and paste it pretty much. Not really copy, but you can take the same ideas and put it into there pretty quick. You doing okay? Okay. You doing all right? Sure. How you doing?
I have a quick question on this one.
Mhm.
It's still giving me a syntax error.
Does it already exist?
Oh, did I not put it at the top?
A local parameter named output file cannot be declared in the scope because it already exists.
Oh, okay, so I think I chose output file again for that one.
Oh yeah, so this stream reader is an input file. There you go.
Okay.
Okay, good. Yep. Looking good. Get some of those extra spaces out of there. It'll help to manage your code. How you guys doing over here? Yeah.
So when we do, like, when we create the output file,
Mm-hmm.
and then we put in the file path,
Mhm.
is it automatically recognizing that very last part is the name of the text file?
Yep.
Or, so
Mhm.
that's just because it's part of the file path, it
Yep,
recognizes that.
exactly.
So it's like that logic right into the.
Yep. And it needs to be either a .txt file or a binary file.
And it looks for that too.
Mm-hmm. Be one of those two files. Yep. Doing okay? Kind of figuring it out? Okay, what we got left? Okay. Open its file path. So a stream reader, because we're pulling it into the program, it's going to be an input file. So just say stream reader input file. Perfect. You just do a semicolon. So now what we need to do is we need to open it. So I guess that line of code above it, the open the file, needs to go below that line, because we're going to open it now that we have a stream reader. Oh, I hate that.
Me too. I'm honestly so lost. It's bad. I need to read through.
Oh, whenever you take a whole semester, even like a month off, it's like, oh, this sucks.
Yeah, it's been like a year and a half
Has it? It's been a while?
since April.
Is that when you took it from me? Or did you take it from somebody else? That's a long time. Okay, so let's do a try catch. Perfect, and then exception EX. Just go ahead and put that in there. Perfect. So now to open the file, we can keep that thrown there for a minute. So inside the try, to open the input file, we need to say input file equals file dot. And then to open the stream reader's open text, right? But I guess we're just going to read it, so that's good. Yep, open text, and then provide the entire file path. We should have it. Just say file path, I think, is what we named it as now. Yep. Perfect. So that actually opened the file. Now to use it, we need to take all that pseudocode and put it into the try. Do a semicolon at the end of there. Yep, just take all of those. Then put it just below that try statement. Maybe just drag it on the end. Yeah. Perfect. So we create a while loop. Let's do while tab tab. And then not at the input file dot end of stream. So the not symbol, the shift 1. There we go. Input file dot end of stream. Perfect. And that's going to read the file and see if there's anything inside of it, right? So if it created it, there's not going to be anything inside of it. It's just going to skip past. But if it did read something, we need to, did we even put that in there? If the file doesn't exist. If it does exist, it is there. So we open it. Okay, that's good. Just making sure we have something there. Okay, so while we're reading it, let's take this and put it inside the while loop. And then do you remember how to add items to a list box? Okay, let's do that next then. One
I
more.
saw my book yesterday.
Did you? Good.
I'm gonna go read
Good.
everything.
Good. So let's take so list box. I don't know what you named it, like LST box something, I think. Yep. Dot items. Dot add. And then pass in input file dot read line. Yep. Dot read line. Perfect. And then open and close your parentheses on the end of that. That's it. Semicolon. And then close the file outside the while loop. Yep. Yep. So just input file dot close. Good. So the end of stream comes from the reader, like it reads the file itself. And if I was going to show you, for example, let's open up a file that we've had before. So like in this case, we have our state and capital. In fact, let me see if I can open that in Notepad++ to get it bigger. WordPad, sure. Come on, zoom up. There we go. So when I do a end of stream, what it's doing is when the file loads itself, the cursor sits at the very top left of the page, and it checks to see if there's anything beyond it. So the end of stream says, are you at the end of the stream? Is there nothing behind you, right? And so the end of stream just checks characters inside the file. So when I do a read line, what it does is it says, okay, I'm right here. I'm not at the end of the stream. So it reads the entire line, and then it kicks down and sits right here until I call the read line again. And then I said, oh, you're not at the end of the stream. Again, it looks past it, and it says, yep, there's still some characters past it, so I can keep going until I'm at the end of the stream. So that's kind of how, at least what it's doing function-wise. Okay, so you guys, looks like you guys are doing good. The open the file. We needed to create one more pseudocode that we forgot, is create an instance of the stream reader. Okay, so we needed to say stream reader, input file. We needed to create the try-catch block, exception EX. And then we needed to put all of this stuff inside the try. Okay, so you probably already did that, but that's what it should look like. So instance of the stream reader, open the file. So we say input file equals file dot, not file path, come on. File dot open text. Take the file path. Come on, file path. There we go. We're going to loop through the file, so we're going to create a while loop. This says while we're not at the input file.end of stream. That'll again check to show you what I just showed you up on the board. And then we'll take this, add the item.
Random question.
Yep.
How, like, when you create like the try and then you create the brackets, do you automatically make all the stuff go right inside?
Try tab tab. So it's my IntelliSense that's just kind of helping me fill it out. So if you type out any word that's a reserved word in C#, you typically just press tab tab. If it's like a loop or like, I don't know, there's other things that we could do for that too, like properties.
And it makes like the comments and stuff go inside of it?
No, I had to drag the comments in there, yeah. A cool thing, I think if I select it and do Control up, no, let's see. That's not working. There is a quick way to move. There we go. Alt up and Alt down moves whatever you have selected. So if I wanted to move close file up one line, I just hold down Alt and press the up key. And it moves whatever you have selected.
Move it all to the side. Because there are the buttons here.
Oh yeah, so when I move it to the side, you can select the entire row and just press tab and shift tab. That's kind of the quickest way to do side to side. If it's source code, however, you can actually move it all like lined up perfect. You know how we do the tabs to make it readable? You can do Control KD. I'll put that up on the board. That's like one of my favorite shortcuts. Control plus K, then plus D, and that lines all of your code tabbed perfectly. So for example, sometimes I see students that have like their input right here, their while loop can be right there, and it's like, oh my gosh, like that makes me cringe, right? Because it's all over the place. All they had to do is just do Control KD and it lines it up perfectly with their code. So just kind of a quick shortcut to help you with that. Okay, so we write the file. So we've read it and we do have an item. If there is an item we're going to read, we're going to say lstbox answers or whatever you called your list box dot items dot add and add the input file dot read line. Okay, whoops, he's going on the outside. And so it'll read the entire line. It's going to take it out of there. It's going to add it to my list box so that I can see what answers have been stored before I'm actually going to add more answers to my file. And then when I'm done, I just say input file.close. Okay. I think that's a really good place to stop. We'll do another message box.show really quick. This says ex.message. And semicolon. So I think that's all for that. We didn't do the save yet, but at least I gave you the code for the loading the file. If you need me to scroll up or scroll down, let me know. But that's a good place to save it. If you have a thumb drive, do you need me to refresh you on how to save it to a thumb drive? Because there's no file save as in Visual Studio.
Like I have my hard drive right here.
Are you running it right from your hard drive? Or are you,
Like I originally saved it to a file in my hard drive.
okay, that's perfect. So you're actually running it from your hard drive. You're good. But if for some reason you want to save it to this thing, let me show you how to do that one more time. You need to make sure you press the Save All button or go to File, Save All. There's no file save as, remember. So close Visual Studio. All your feel goods go out the window because you're like, oh crap, did it save? Did it not save? Should be saved. Let's go into your C drive, users, find your user, source, repos, find your file, and that's the file you copy and paste to your thumb drive. The entire folder. You don't have to zip it. In fact, if you don't zip it, it's kind of nice because you can run it from your hard drive or your thumb drive and actually program it from your thumb drive so you don't have to move it after that. Yeah?
Wouldn't the file path that we have break it though? Break the program?
The file's going to store inside the project, so we can always change that really quick. But yes, you're right, it will.
Is there a way that we fix that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. If I go to Properties, let's see if I can find a quick way. Okay, so if you do C:users, like the \users, \default, that's just the default user that's using the app. That'll help. I don't know if that's going to resolve all of our issues, but yeah, but you're right, at home it's going to be different, huh? And it might not even work at home if you do that way. So the bin debug folder might have been best in that case. We'll finish it here in class anyway, so that it'll at least have the file inside of our project.